Well, welcome once again to another episode of Curiosity, Not Judgment. My name is Birga,
And I'm Gary.
and we are coming to you from two different countries again, so that necessitated us being on Zoom. Otherwise, one of us would be very late.
Yes, very late. 4 hour difference right
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk today about community, and I know we've covered this subject matter in the past in some various ways, but obviously, Gary, you being in Brazil with your wife's family you're being exposed to a whole different layer of community. I'll have you touch on that real briefly, and then I'll jump into kind of the subject that I had in mind for today.
Sounds good. Yeah, the community here is amazing. And, Italy, Brazil, there's many countries where you find many generations in one home.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess some could argue that we're coming back to that in America, maybe against our intentions. But I, I, uh, I just love the community here. I mean, the family here is just it's so important. Family is so important here. And folks here really take care of each other. And I won't go into what our policy should be with homeless and mental illness and other things in America, because I think we've kind of ratcheted into an area that's hard to come back from. But you don't see that kind of stuff here. I mean, everybody is literally taken care of in the home. As a matter of fact, the kids don't leave the home until they get married, and
Mm-hmm.
even after that sometimes. And so you'll see multiple generations. Whenever we go to somebody else's house, everybody here is Chia and Chio, which is uncle and aunt,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, right? Whether they are really or not.
Yeah.
And the rest of everybody is your cousins and brothers and sisters. And so it's when you go to another household, it's just a whole bunch of people there. And, rarely do you go to a house with one or two people in it. It's just it always feels like I'm constantly in community here. Now, me being an extrovert, not needing to withdraw, I'm in heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's always someone to talk to. And even though there's sometimes severe language barriers, you figure it out. And after a few days here, I can work around it. But community is a big deal here. I feel it more here than I do when I'm in the States,
Mm-hmm.
and it's comforting. I don't have to worry. Look, I'm in a foreign land and don't speak the language. I haven't felt worried once,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh,
Interesting.
I know somebody will take care of me. Even if I went and decided to go for a walk down the street somewhere and to a local store and got lost or something happened or something, I feel like somebody tried to help me out, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a different feeling and it feels good.
Yeah, that's great. We've watched a couple episodes of the program on Netflix called Blue Zone, which is talking about
Yeah,
pockets across the world where there's a high number of centenarians. Is that the right word?
that's right.
All right, people living,
Living
age
to
100.
100. Yep.
And, I'm what, 3 episodes in, but they really have made the point that community has been a huge contributing factor to the lifespan, the elongated lifespan. And it's fascinating to me how that plays out in the practical, whether you're looking at a community in Japan or you're looking at a community. I'm trying to remember some of the other places that were featured, but the community
Was in
looks,
Italy.
yeah, in
Yeah.
Italy, right. It looks very different. And how they do community is, very specific to each region. But the fact that they are there and do life together in whatever capacity plays such a tremendous role in the longevity. And I found it fascinating.
In stress reduction alone,
Mm,
I would think that would play. My mother used to always tell me that, and she had a theory, a hypothesis that we all have a tendency towards some disease process, whether it's ulcers, cancer, whatever. And those processes are triggered by stress,
mm,
the bad kind of stress. There's
yeah.
eustress, which is the good kind of stress, uh, which is rare. But the bad kind of stress that does the cortisol and all of the bad things, if you're in community, I think there's less stress,
Mm,
and that alone could be one of the secrets to longevity. Also, I think there's more accountability if you're starting to go off the deep end with diet or
yeah.
other things, behaviors. I think that's harder to do when you're in community, right? And so Isolation, I think, is the opposite of community. If we could go there, I think is going to cause more stress just inherently, and more bad behavior and more bad choices potentially. There's things that I could see a lot of different factors towards longevity that would happen in community.
Yeah. This whole thought process came up a few weeks ago for me. I heard a speaker who was telling the story about an anthropologist who had been asked, what was the earliest indication of community? Thinking, maybe they had unearthed some ancient civilization and there was some evidence that, would point towards community. And her answer was very quick and very simple. And she said, oh, that's very easy to tell you when that first was noticed, is when they found evidence of a healed femur, meaning that either someone had taken care of the person with the broken leg, or they had moved the person to travel with them in a nomadic community. Because prior to that, a broken leg meant you're on your own. Animals are going to get you. You're not going to get your food.
Yeah,
It's a death
right.
sentence, right? And so I found that to be a fascinating thought process, that the earliest sign of community was a healed femur. And that just got my mind spinning about, what it is to be part of a community and to take care of one another.
When we see someone with a broken leg, do we help them out metaphorically? Are we looking for people who are in need of help? I think in this world where we kind of run really fast, we run at 30 miles an hour with bursts to 100. It's tough to take the time to even see that people need our help.
Mm,
It's not as apparent as someone who's literally not moving in a situation where movement was necessary.
yeah.
But we still could see the signs if we were looking for them. I think I get a little jaded and think, you know what, people are on their own, or the family unit should take care of their own, and I'm not necessary. But I think we all have a little bit of responsibility toward that community of looking for people who need help. But the flip side of that is I need to ask for help when I need help. And I think I've been trained to not ask for help as a
Mm,
sign of weakness.
yeah. I've been really deeply thinking about community and real person to person community versus online community. And I know we've had so many conversations over the course of the last, 94 episodes about all the things that transpired during the pandemic, about, student isolation, workplace isolation. And now we really are having to enter into an era of considering valid, healthy, uh, realistic community. And I'm pausing a little bit as I'm making this list, is because I'm recently now employed with an organization that is fighting human trafficking. And I've been going through a ton of training videos, and one of the things that it's talking about is the grooming technique that traffickers will use for recruiting children. And it is through, I'm going to say, community, that the pseudo community online, whether it starts in Instagram or a gaming scenario where the little bits of conversation start to spark curiosity, and then it's that the very specific hooks to draw someone into community, and I'm saying that in air quotes, because there is a sense of isolation for that person that's become evident somehow to the trafficker, and they know the things to say and they know the signs to look for. And we as people, and maybe even more so in children, we long for community, we long for acceptance, we long for togetherness, and to feel part of a tribe. And we've spoken on this so many different ways, but I think it just bears repeating that we as adults need to be very mindful that we are in healthy community, that we have to be proactive in seeking that out. But then also, as parents and guardians, we need to make sure that we are teaching our children what healthy, genuine community is, because we don't want anyone else to fall victim to false community and ultimately get lured into, the dark underbelly of our society.
I think there's a lot of people whose journey have taken them into a false community at one point in their lives,
Yeah.
where they felt rejected, legitimately or not, from their families or from their natural communities.
Mhm.
And so they were drawn to a pseudo community or a community that's not really out for your best interests. Um, and, uh, and how tragic that can be, and how we need to watch it for ourselves. We need to watch it for our loved ones and try to help and protect each other. But and part of that is really taking care of relationships in your family and making sure that people don't feel that rejection
Mhm.
for uh, a behavior, for instance, where true family, for instance, needs to be there and love each other through things, even poor choices and bad behavior. It's a really tough one because I'm sure that people may say, look, at least these people respect who I am. At least these people acknowledge me for who I am. I'm feeling rejected by you, even if that's more formal language than we might use.
Yeah.
It's a big issue.
Oh, huge, huge. And you've said some things that have spurred me to really think about the notion of what is our responsibility in community. And when you have people as part of your circle, whether they're relatives or neighbors or someone that's just been placed in your life, and they're a difficult person, they're hard to naturally love. What is our role in including them in community? And I know we've talked about being curious about our neighborhoods, our geographic neighborhoods and the people around us. And, the crotchety person up the street that always seems to get mad when you walk by their house with a dog or whatever, is it our responsibility to try to break down some of those barriers? Is it our responsibility to try to include them in community? And then of course you have to ask those questions on a much more personal level when it comes to family members. But I think maybe that does bear a little bit of discussion today. What would you say is our responsibility towards pursuing community with someone that's really hard to love?
Wow, there's so much there, Birga. I will have to tell you that I probably don't do the best job of this. I feel like people can self-select themselves out of my life by being kind of pains, right?
Mm.
And that's I'm not proud of that. I think it's really difficult to stay in a relationship that you feel is not being reciprocated or is is painful and hard work. But oftentimes, as I'm saying that out loud, I'm realizing that, of course, those people are hard to deal with. The old saying, hurt people.
Yep, that's right.
And if 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 someone's in that situation, do we owe it to at least try to break that cycle and pull them into a virtuous cycle versus a vicious cycle? Can we role model to them, that caring that asks for nothing in return?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is the good place to inject our curious questions, right? So if you've got somebody, a relative, a neighbor, somebody that has kind of been placed in your life for a reason, or you sense that you're supposed to have some engagement with them, but they're really hard to love, maybe to begin to talk through with somebody, a trusted person where it's not a gossip, but maybe to talk through some questions about how can I extend the olive branch to this person, or how can I extend a warm gesture, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What are some of those curious questions, keeping in mind that statement that it is very possible that that person has been hurt people. That's, I think, a very true and wise statement to consider. But are there some minimal points of intersection or investment that we could consider to be part of somebody's life? And maybe in a crotchety neighbor situation, is it you bake an extra batch of cookies at Christmas time, when you're doing distribution, and leave it on the front porch with a note? Is it, just being mindful of when their trash cans are out and putting them in, bringing them up to the house? What are some of those low barriers that you might be able to overcome in beginning to break down some of those negative reactions? And with family members or somebody that's much closer, is there anything maybe that I've done to cause hurt? Is there anything that I have said in the past, or is there, childhood traumas that need to be worked out? Is there unforgiveness? We can start piling on the questions, I would imagine, as we try to get to some of the root cause of why somebody is a challenge to be part of our natural community.
I love your ideas, especially with respect to neighbors, of those little things like pulling in their trash cans. And my neighbor and I had almost like a contest as to who can pull in each other's trash cans. Now, he wins with my travel schedule lately, but
I was gonna say, you're never home to pull in the trash.
but, but when I'm home, boy, he knows he's gonna have to race out there. And sometimes he does come out when I'm doing it, which is always fun, and we chat for a while. Um, Shoveling the walk, that's another low commitment promise or strategy in New Mexico, because it doesn't happen very often. But
True.
when it does, there's a few of us who are in a contest to shovel everybody's driveways and sidewalks, right? Those little kinds of things. And I think for me, if I'm being intentional about my core relationships with family and friends, and even work folks, it gives me kind of a basis and a foundation where I'm feeling secure enough in my relationships, or I can even start thinking outside of myself toward neighbors, etc.
Hmm.
So it might be, and I'm being curious about this with you, it might be that I start with my closest relationships and make sure I'm being intentional with those. Now,
Yeah.
you might say, well, look, there's just so many of those that I'm having a hard time keeping up with those relationships. Well, that I think begs a series of different questions.
Mm.
What are you spending your time on? What is if you believe that the relationships are most important in your life, if you do want on your deathbed that last week to be surrounded by loved ones, what are we doing now, right?
Hmm.
What what are we doing intentionally to take care of the people around us
Yeah.
in deep, meaningful little ways? And then that could create a foundation where we can then start looking outside of our little taken care of circle
Hmm.
to who else in there who doesn't have that circle, who's out there that needs that little extra touch. And even if they give you a scowl every time you walk past their house, you know taking in their garbage cans and shoveling their walk is little things that you can do to say, look, you're part of this community. You deserve to have your walk shoveled just because you're a neighbor.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to a situation that I encountered pretty early in our marriage and young kid experience that really shook me. And I'd had a dear, dear friend in high school we'd been very close. And after I got married and had kids, the contact became less and less and less. And finally, I asked kind of point blank, I was like, did I do something? What's the problem? Like, what's happened to our friendship? And I was told, I don't like to talk to you because you have kids and I'm unable to have kids and it's too hard for me. And it just, the friendship virtually ended. And it was very sad to me for a couple of reasons. I felt like, well, I'm not worth being involved with because I had the blessing of children. Like that to me was a really hurtful thing. But then conversely, I thought, well, gosh, if you're going to eliminate everyone who has kids from your life, you're going to have a pretty small pool for your community, right? And so I think through some of these situations, and I think we need to be very mindful of the people around us that have had a shift in their family makeup or their family situation, how their community may have changed, or if they don't have a change, but they kind of are on they're outliers because maybe they don't fit the traditional norm of, the rest of the community. How do we be really mindful about helping create an atmosphere where they feel welcome? So, a single person in a group of marrieds, right? Or a widower in the midst of marrieds, those types of scenarios. How do we cultivate an environment where the community still feels safe, even if somebody has had a change in a position, or, like I said, just Maybe they never got married, never had children, and they just feel isolated because of that.
We were coming back to isolation, which is, as we talked about earlier, isolation, the opposite of community. I think if you are isolating yourself, and as a widower, I could see where that could happen real easily. Things just got really overwhelming right after that happened. Um, I think you have to, for yourself, think, wow, do I want to be isolated? Or should I try to make some effort? Am I going through a grieving process? Your friend from high school that's a grieving process. She didn't lose somebody, she never had it.
Yeah.
And that's a grief process, right?
Sure.
And so helping people through their grief processes is something that's a big deal. Understanding what that process is and understanding that your first attempt at reaching out to someone like that may not work, may have the opposite effect of what you're looking for, but continuing to reach out. You can only offer, you can't force yourself on someone.
Certainly.
But boy, if I see someone who's isolating, that's a big, at least a yellow flag for me. Look, there are some people who can be monks or hermits and live on their own successfully and be happy.
Yeah.
I just don't see, that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we all need to watch out for. If it's happening to us, we need to be intentional about cultivating at least a couple of really good relationships.
Yeah.
At least one with someone who knows everything about us, me, but likes me anyway.
Yeah.
At least one, and then maybe a couple more. And if you don't have that, I think that's a dangerous situation to be in.
Yeah.
And then if you're on the outside looking in at someone who's in that situation, trying to encourage them and gently challenge them to be in relationship and to be in community. Community is just the extension of multiple relationships, right? But
Yeah.
it's so important in this day and age, especially because we do have the ability to sit on our couch and never leave.
That's right.
More and more, COVID has shown us that we can go to school, work, interact with humans, supposedly, through our social media. Hopefully they're humans. And that's, we can do that. The point is, should we do that exclusively?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to make too dramatic of a statement, but I've really been thinking about this, that I do believe in part that community could be the difference between life or death. And as we were talking about the anthropologic, answer about the healed femur, that literally was the difference between life and death, whether that person could be moved with the tribe or left to die. Fast forward all of these thousands of years, I do think that isolation, especially in this era of being able to do everything online, you can find yourself in a very dark place very quickly, where you have eliminated human contact. You've eliminated even, the benefits of going outside and the natural things of being in the sun and feeling the wind on your face and doing some of those life-giving exercises. And so I think maybe just to close today with a question of, are you in healthy community? And if you're not in healthy community, what are some of those beginning steps you can take to form that community around you?
And there's even a foundational question in there implied, which is, what is my definition of healthy community? Or what is healthy community to me?
Yeah.
At this point in my life, that can change season to season too.
Sure.
Or various points in your journey. But is healthy community one or two friends that I need to go seek out and seek relationship with? Is it family? Is it something where I need to develop a new family, a new group of friends? These are really good questions to ask.
Yeah. Well, thank you for puzzling through this with me. I always enjoy our conversations, and have fun in the rest of your time in Brazil.
Thank you so much. Have fun in Albuquerque.
I will do my best. All right. Well, all of you, we welcome you to check out the website, leave a comment, get connected on social media, however you want to meet up with us. But you can start at curiositynotjudgment.com, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Take care.